The Philadelphia 76ers might just be the strangest team in the entire NBA right now. Think about it. Last season, they won only 24 games, finishing near the bottom of the league. That record locked them into the third overall pick in the draft. But here's the crazy part, on paper, and everyone say it with me, for the first of many times. When healthy, this squad has the potential to be a top 3 team in what is currently a very weak Eastern Conference. They should be part of every big NBA conversation heading into this season. They just drafted an exciting young prospect in VJ Edgecombe. They have the explosive Tyrese Maxey, who continues to prove he's one of the league's most underrated guards. Jared McCain had an impressive, even if short, rookie season. Quentin Grimes showed flashes of brilliance late last year. And let's not forget, they have Paul George, and of course, former MVP Joel Embiid. On paper, this is a dangerous team. But in reality, they are simply not moving the needle. Even the league itself seems to agree. For the first time in 4 years, the Sixers have been completely left off the NBA's Christmas Day schedule, one of the league's biggest showcase events. Now, sure, Christmas Day isn't the ultimate measure of a team's relevance, and this year, only 2 Eastern Conference squads made the list. But still, this is a massive statement. The Sixers have been left behind. The league isn't waiting around for the if-healthy dream to finally happen. It feels like the Joel Embiid era in Philadelphia has quietly reached its expiration date, and the NBA knows it. But the real question is, do the Sixers know it too? Have they started making decisions under the assumption that Embiid's time as the franchise cornerstone is over? It might sound crazy to say that about a player who just recently won an MVP. But history tells us that big men often age quickly. Their primes can be shockingly short. And when injuries start stacking up, the decline is brutal. If you're running the Sixers, you have to at least consider the possibility that Embiid will never truly be healthy again, and what that means for the team's future. For now, Embiid is still the face of the franchise. But that's not entirely by choice. Just a year ago, the Sixers handed him a 3-year, $193 million contract extension that runs until the summer of 2029. Given his injury history, that might be the most untradeable contract in the entire league. And here's the part people don't talk about enough. That extension was probably a mistake from the very start. When they signed it, Embiid had just finished playing in the Olympics, where he barely looked healthy, and he played only 39 games the season before in the NBA. Sure, you could argue he's still an all-NBA talent when healthy, but giving him a massive multi-year max deal at that point required some very optimistic thinking about his durability. It was a gamble, and not one the Sixers had to take. His previous contract already ran through 2026, which means they could have waited, assessed his health, and then decided. Instead, they locked themselves into paying him over $60 million a year for his mid-30s seasons, years when many big men are already declining fast. If they could go back in time, there's no question the Sixers would rather take the risk of letting him hit free agency in 2026 than being tied to that deal now. So if the contract is bad, why not just trade him? That's the problem. No team is taking on that deal today, not even the ones known for making questionable moves. Which leaves the Sixers in a strange position. They can't move Embiid. They can't fully rely on him. And they can't keep pretending the future will magically be different. The smartest play? Start building with the mindset that the Embiid era is done. The core going forward should be Maxey, Edgecombe, and McCain. If Embiid and Paul George somehow manage a healthy season, great, maybe they can make a playoff run. But if, as is far more likely, both guys play around 40 games, then at least the organization is already preparing for what comes next. It's time for the Sixers to face reality. This isn't about giving up, it's about being ready. Because the longer they cling to the past, the further they risk falling behind in the future. And in the NBA, once you're stuck at the bottom, the climb back up is brutal. Now, that's my take on the Sixers, but from their perspective, it's a tricky situation. And let's be honest, sometimes you need a clear head to see things as they really are. For me, that starts with one thing: good sleep. If you've been following me for a while, you know sleep is a huge deal in my life right now. I've got a 5-month-old at home, adorable, but she's got my wife and me running on fumes. That's why I decided it was finally time to upgrade my sleep setup, and I ended up switching to bare mattress. Let me tell you, this isn't just about a comfy bed. It's about feeling more rested, easing my back pain, and waking up ready to tackle the day. I'm 6 feet 4 inches, turning 30 soon, and back pain was becoming a daily struggle. Within weeks of switching, my mornings started feeling different. No more stiff back, no tossing and turning, and way more energy. One of my favorite parts is their cooling technology. Living in a place where it's hot for most of the year, I used to wake up sweating. Now, I stay cool through the night without blasting the AC. And apparently, I'm not alone. Bear recently surveyed over 300 customers, and 82% said their sleep quality improved after switching, with 95% recommending it to a friend. If you're curious, the process is super simple. Go to their website, take their sleep quiz, and it matches you to your ideal mattress based on firmness preference, sleep position, and a few other factors. Mine recommended the Elite Hybrid, right in the middle on firmness, and it's been perfect for me. And it's not just me enjoying it. My dogs, Freckles, Sully, and Luna, have basically claimed the bed as their own. I'm not joking, trying to change the sheets has turned into a wrestling match because they won't get off. The best part? Bear mattresses are made without harmful chemicals, fiberglass-free, and designed to last. They offer multiple options depending on your needs, and every purchase comes with free US shipping straight to your door. Limited lifetime warranty for peace of mind. 120-night sleep trial so you can be sure it's right for you. Right now, they're giving 40% off if you use my code at checkout. That's an even bigger discount than what's listed on their site, so if you've been thinking about upgrading your sleep, now's the time. I've seen firsthand what better sleep can do for my day-to-day life, my mood, and even my productivity. Trust me, once you try it, you'll wonder why you didn't switch sooner. If the Sixers were truly ready to start making decisions like the Joel Embiid era was over, the first big move, aside from trading Embiid himself, which we've already established is basically impossible, would be finding a way to get rid of Paul George's contract. That's easier said than done. When the Sixers brought in George last offseason, it was clearly an all-in Embiid era move. At that moment, it actually didn't seem like a disaster. George was coming off a strong final year in Los Angeles, 74 games played and the most efficient scoring season of his career. For a player who had been criticized for inconsistency, it was proof he still had elite-level production left. On paper, pairing a recently crowned MVP in Embiid with an all-NBA caliber wing like George, alongside Tyrese Maxey in the backcourt, looked like the blueprint for an Eastern Conference contender. The injury risks were obvious, but the expectation was to get at least 2 strong seasons out of George before the back end of the deal became an overpay. But reality hit fast. Just like the Embiid extension, the George signing unraveled almost immediately. Multiple nagging injuries. Just 41 games played all season, and even in those appearances, he wasn't himself. His game fell off a cliff. The explosiveness, the consistency, the impact, all gone. With George and Embiid both sidelined for large chunks of the season, the Sixers' hopes crumbled. They shifted into tank mode late in the year, piling up losses to secure the 3rd overall pick in the draft. And as always happens when a talented team ends up with a high lottery pick, the rumor mill exploded. Could they trade the pick for a proven star? Could this be the move that reloaded the roster instantly? But let's be real, that storyline almost never comes true anymore. Teams love the idea of flipping a top 3 pick for an established star, but in practice, it's a dead dream. The Blazers didn't do it for Damian Lillard, they kept their pick and drafted Scoot Henderson. The Warriors tried to move the number 2 pick in 2020, failed, and took James Wiseman instead. Even now, they're still trying to figure out the Jonathan Kuminga situation. The truth is, the last time this actually worked was in 2014, when LeBron returned to Cleveland and they traded the number 1 pick for Kevin Love. That was over a decade ago. For the Sixers, this was the moment to admit the obvious. They weren't a dominant, healthy super team waiting to break out. They were a broken roster with bad contracts, aging stars, and a future that needed a hard reset. A decade has passed since the last time a top 3 draft pick was actually flipped for a proven star. Back when LeBron returned to Cleveland and they shipped the number 1 pick for Kevin Love. In today's NBA, that type of move is basically extinct. So when the Sixers landed the number 3 pick this year, they did exactly what most teams in their position do, they kept it. And honestly, if the mindset is planned for the future, it makes perfect sense. Instead of dangling the pick for a veteran, Philadelphia used it to select VJ Edgecombe, pairing him with Tyrese Maxey to form the beginnings of a potential long-term core. To me, that choice was the first real sign the franchise might be shifting its thinking when it comes to Joel Embiid's future. Edgecombe's draft journey was full of misconceptions. Throughout the process, the conversation was framed as a choice between Edgecombe and Ace Bailey at number 3. Bailey was hyped as a high-upside scoring wing, while Edgecombe was labeled the safe two-way player. But that label never told the full story. Edgecombe isn't just safe, he's a freak athlete with real upside. If I was sitting in that draft room, he would have been my pick as well. Of course, the Sixers did have trade options. One scenario floating around involved packaging the third pick with Paul George's massive contract in exchange for something like Lauri Markkanen from Utah. In that hypothetical, the Jazz would take on George's deal while sending back an all-star forward. Personally, I like that idea because it struck a balance between competing now and preparing for the future. But it never happened. Maybe Utah didn't see enough value, maybe Philly valued Edgecombe more, or maybe both. Either way, George's contract remains on the books, and it's a huge obstacle if the Sixers want to build for the future. It doesn't expire until the summer of 2028, which is an eternity in NBA years. Here's the funny thing, as bad as the George and Embiid deals look now, the Sixers have actually made some really good roster moves in recent years. Maxey has turned into a legitimate star after being drafted late in the first round. McCain, a mid-first rounder last year, was on track to win Rookie of the Year before his injury. The Quentin Grimes trade looks like a steal. And now they have Edgecombe's two-way talent to pair with that perimeter firepower, exactly the kind of skill set you'd want around a dominant big like Embiid. The problem is when you zoom out over Embiid's entire career, the franchise has had almost no roster stability. Front office turnover, bad contracts, questionable trades, it's been a cycle. We've seen the Tobias Harris acquisition and megadeal, the brief Jimmy Butler experiment, the Ben Simmons standoff, the James Harden saga, and now the George situation. Multiple front offices have failed to find consistency, and the mistakes keep stacking. That's why I think the most important truth here is this: the right basketball decision is probably to move on from the Embiid era entirely. Forget the idea that he'll ever be consistently healthy. See if you can rehab his and George's trade value enough to get something in return. Then, commit to building around Maxey, Edgecombe, and the other young guys. But that's the logical path, and front offices are rarely purely logical. They're human. The people in charge are thinking about their jobs as much as they're thinking about the long-term health of the team. Since 2020, when the current leadership took over, there have been highs and lows. But this season feels like a pivot point, the kind of year that decides whether the decision-makers keep their jobs. And that reality changes the entire decision-making process. If you're the one in charge and you think there's even a small chance of a deep playoff run, you're not trading your stars and starting over. You're doing what the Sixers did this offseason, running it back, hoping for better health, and praying it all clicks. Yes, maybe the trade market wasn't offering much. But there's no doubt that personal job security plays a role. For some in this front office, this might be the last shot they ever get to run an NBA franchise. That's a powerful motivator to keep pushing for short-term success, even if the long-term outlook says otherwise. Here's the twist, though, as unlikely as it sounds, the Sixers still have a shot. The Eastern Conference has already been ravaged by injuries this year. If everything broke perfectly, Embiid stays healthy, George turns back the clock, Maxey takes another leap, Philly could theoretically be the best team in the East this season. Yes, this is the same team that won just 24 games last year. And yes, their odds might be less than 1%. But in sports, that tiny sliver of hope is sometimes enough to keep you from hitting the reset button. So here's where things stand. The Sixers are caught between two timelines, one that says tear it down, build around the young guys, and another that whispers just one healthy season and we're back. The smart move might be obvious, but the emotional pull of that miracle run is strong. For now, the franchise, and its fans, are left clinging to that slim chance of a healthy season, because without a major change in direction, hope is the only thing left to hold on to.